today we're going to kind of focus more on the challenges and then how to mitigate some of those challenges using some tools that are available to us today. So today, again, it's Dave Campbell and myself, Joe Whitney. Dave is the guru of all things pretty much when it comes to design and construction. So, always a pleasure to have him on doing the technical stuff for myself. So today's agenda, we're going to spend some time reviewing some common construction challenges, hence the title of the webinar. But they're going to talk about the various tools and softwares that we have to kind of mitigate some of those challenges, and then talk about kind of what's next in the pipe that we see coming down. That we, obviously there's going to be some changes. Technology doesn't stay stagnant, so we're going to talk about some of those changes towards the end of this episode. So a little bit about us. If you're just now tuning in and you're unfamiliar with who TopCon Solutions is, we are the retail division of TopCon Positioning Systems. TopCon Positioning Systems is part of TopCon Global. We are a complete solutions provider. We focus on pretty much all aspects of construction, whether it's the design and software to the hammer and lathe going out in the field. We do everything in between, connecting workflows and people. That's kind of our mission. We are an industry-leading training and technical support center, so not just for our equipment that we supply and maintain, but also for the software that we sell. We are an Autodesk Technical Training Center, certified Autodesk Training Center, as well as Bluebeam specialized as well. We have full-on field troubleshooting. Our guys will go straight to your job site and work on your machines, all that sort of stuff. We have local service and repair. I'll dive more into what I mean by local in the next slide here in a second. But if you visit any of our stores, you'll see that we have the widest range of everyday field supplies, accessories. At any time, if you have questions at any one of our locations, feel free to pull somebody aside, and we'll be happy to kind of dive into some challenges with you guys. So on this presentation, what I meant by local was, we have a varied, or I guess rather a vast territory we cover. So we've got 13 brick and mortar locations. In those 13 brick and mortar locations, we are covering about 20 states plus the nation's capital, Washington, D.C. there. We've got about 180 employees in our division, focusing primarily on the Autodesk and TopCon line of equipment and services supporting all that sort of stuff. And so again, Dave Campbell, who's our all-around guru for pretty much everything. I don't think there's anything you don't do, Dave, and I know I'm setting the bar kind of high for you. Talk about
just a little bit, stumbling
just
through,
a little bit.
stumbling through websites and stuff this morning, but I'm good with construction and other stuff.
Yeah, somebody, feel free to stump him. We're happy to keep him humble. But Dave, you're an all-around guru focusing on things from scan to BIM to Revit, design, MEP, architecture, structural, PDF editing, all that fun junk, man. You're the guy. You're a whiz. Me, I'm just a lowly territory manager. I focus on the eastern, the eastern part of the United States.
I think it's kind of a test or a kind of statement towards the construction industry today, right? There's so many different avenues that we can go down to try and really supplement our workflows, our processes, and what we need. And that's kind of another reason why we're here today, right? We got to talk about how all this connects and what the issues of having all of these different platforms spread out around everywhere, no matter if it's, your workflow calls for PDF or it calls for, BIM or it calls for SIM, whatever it is, we need that data.
Well, there's no one magic tool that fixes everything, right? As construction becomes more complex, more tools get involved. So all in all, it's all about connecting that data. As you tuned into yesterday's webinar where we talked about BIM 360 and why the common data environment platform is so crucial to what we're doing today. We're going to kind of talk about that in context of pitfalls we're seeing and how we can mitigate those. The various file formats that we're dealing with, I don't think they're going away. I think we're just going to keep adding more and more. So how do we deal with that sort of stuff? So this is an awesome slide. I love this. It's probably been around for about 2 years, and I don't think it's changed. I update the statistics every now and then, but it still holds true. So 25% of cost are spent on rework. I mean, that's a That's a staggering number. You know, you think about the large projects going on, and to tack on an additional 25%, or to you know, figure in another 20%, 25% just specifically for rework. You know, that's something that everybody's targeting, how they can kind of recoup that cost, especially in an industry where the margins are so slim anyways. You know, we're trying to keep as much dollars in our pockets as possible. Now, there's a lot of technology that's come out that solves individual pieces, but what we end up with is a disconnected system, like we were talking about yesterday, where the data loss actually kind of just feeds back into this rework issue, because again, we're not on the latest file, we're not paying attention to the latest data, that sort of stuff. And then this next part, the $10 million of claims are filed each day in the United States because of construction defects. Dave, you and I chat about this all the time. It's not about if you get sued, it's when you get sued in construction. So we have to kind of, you know, CYA everything, document everything, you know, every minute communication that gets, you know, sent has to be tracked. Everything that happens has to be tracked. We want to QA/QC as much as possible, and we want to keep track of as much information as possible. So, you know, finding out ways to do that, you know, between emails and text messages and whatever we've got going on, you've got to keep track of all of that data somehow.
I definitely agree, and I think that also ties right back into that rework there. If there's any type of defect on the construction site, obviously we have to go out and fix it, right? So that's more money, that's more time. That's something that could have been caught or could have been caught up in the coordination phase, or the kind of let's say clash detection kind of phase in that, or it could have been in the fact that, you know, the design team like communicating over to the construction team and knowing when to stop. Again, we talked yesterday about setting those expectations and, you know, transferring these models over so we can kind of get around some of that rework that is constantly done in our industry. But again, kind of going back to that, it all has to tie together, right? With the design itself, the design model, going into construction and having, you know, accurate placement of elements and objects that we can go ahead and coordinate with the other trades, and then try to, well, really, I guess, prevent a lot of those construction defects that are just plaguing our industry.
Yeah, 100%. And that kind of ties into our next thing, right? As we're talking about rework and defects, fixing that sort of stuff. If you focus on quality from the get-go, you know, you're obviously going to see an increase in operating income, as this next graphic kind of shows. But you know, with that comes more expenses and labor and all that sort of stuff. So how do we, you know, do more with what we have as far as the labor that we have? Obviously, we want to, you know, bring in the most talented people that we can, and you know, be known for our quality. But how do you do that while, you know, maintaining margins and you know, winning repeat business, all that sort of stuff?
Yeah.
So we're gonna kind of.
I was going to say one thing. No, you're good. I was going to say one thing we technically don't really think about a lot in terms of, you know, taking on new technology, taking on the new software or hardwares, whatever it is. But a lot of times, let's say for scanning, if someone decides to get into scanning, that's a person that they have to either hire or train, right? And then we're processing that data. That's somebody that needs to understand how
powerful
to process
machines.
that data.
Yeah.
Yes, exactly. That's, you got to invest in hardware that's going to support that, whether it's computers or, again, scanners or total stations, whatever it is. The more that we push into this, you know, technological kind of realm, and the more that we kind of try to pick this up, we are seeing that it does cost more money. So we're trying to figure out where that balance is, right? That ROI, getting that money back, and then being able to win more business.
Yeah, and so all three of those points that we just mentioned, between rework, you know, mitigating risk as far as, you know, suit and quality and QA/QC, all that fun stuff, it all ties back into, you know, that margin, right? We want to keep as much margin as we can, be on time, you know, have our bids, you know, be, you know, come in as accurate as possible, and feel confident about all this stuff. Because, you know, too often you win a job, right? Your bid wins, and the first thing is like, oh my gosh, what did I miss? Because, you know, somehow you came to be the lowest bid, right? So it, you know, as we dive into all this stuff, how are we going to address tight timelines, tight schedules, or staying on schedule. Yeah, we might move money from one bucket to the next, but how are we going to use that to, one, mitigate the risk, as well as, be lowest cost and be within our normal uh, quote, I guess, rather, so that we can keep our margins. And then also, we want to make sure that everybody goes home safely at the end of a job. So how do you, think about safety as well? So a lot of things, right? A lot of people were just bought off on the idea of BIM. Oh, you got to buy BIM, guys. You got to get into BIM. And then what we ended up with was, 13 dozen disconnected data points, right? All different file formats. Some become stagnant as soon as you print them. Some, um, are specialized to a specific industry. But you have these disconnected workflows that we've kind of all bought off in it. And what this does is it leads to rework and increases our chance for error, rather. And this is not just, one phase of construction. As you can see, this is all phases of construction, all the way through the handover phase, O&M. So you bought off on BIM. Now, how do we connect everything so that we are able to, keep on pace while minimizing any chance for having to do rework, right? We want to produce the best quality right out the gate.
Yes, and I think that another point here when we're looking at this is that that connection that we're talking about, right? That data loss or the translation of information. If your programs don't communicate appropriately, let's just say if you have PDFs programs, right, and you place markups with one, maybe they're not going to work in the other one, right? If there are so many different workflows, different ways that these programs are used, and as you can see there, with all of the different publishing of sets and going from the architect to the structure, mechanical, the GC, Rev 1, we're trying to push all of this information out. But again, as Joey's talking about there, it's still disconnected. As soon as they push that out, they're going to keep working, right? But you're getting that model that is already, in a sense, disconnected. And even in that process, it essentially sets us up for data loss, right? It sets us up for a little bit of risk. It's putting more risk on us at that point. So one of the focuses here, of course, is again how to start mitigating that risk. We are seeing a lot of, again, connection and interaction between some of these programs, but it's still not there yet in terms of what we need for constant, communication, making sure all the information is available to anyone when they need it. That information is going to be translatable, not only coming to one person, but also going back, right? So I think that that it's a big portion of what we're seeing right now is getting away from these siloed workflows.
Yeah, I love drawing out a whiteboard and showing people kind of how this correlates to dollars, right? They tell me their biggest three issues, and almost always it's, mitigating rework, reducing the rework, mitigating risk, and, maintaining quality, right? All of those things kind of correlate with each other. So we've just kind of got to figure out, okay, well, what is, there's no magic bullet, right? But finding tools that are out there that are available to bring all this into perspective, they're there. So we're going to dive into that here in a second. But I love this graphic here, Dave. And so you think about it. Typically, what we're doing on a job site, right, or a typical construction project, GCCM, they've got contract documents. We've got this coordinated model, working with a subcontractor, right? And then you got the subcontractors, trades, all that sort of stuff, doing work. And then what happens? Somebody comes in and makes a change, and then we have to kind of repeat this cycle. But what ends up happening is the trades are working with stagnant data. Nothing is updated in real time, and that coordinated model is kind of separate from everybody. There needs to be a mechanism, I guess, for sharing out and giving everybody access into kind of those real-time changes for coordination. Coordination shouldn't just be here's some files, run them to Navisworks on your computer, and then push out issues to everybody else. I think by enabling everybody to have insight into the coordination process and getting real-time updates is on conflicts and all that sort of stuff, whether they need to be assigned or not at that point, but giving them some kind of insight and power to run that without actually being experts in programs like Navisworks, where it could be just a little bit more daunting. I think those are probably the solution there for mitigating that. We're going to dive into this just here in a little bit as well when we start to open some programs and showing you guys what's what. This is out of all the graphics that we've showed, this is, I promise you guys, this is probably the last one we're going to show before we're going to dive into some stuff here. But this is obviously the most eye-opening. We talk about the data loss between different handover, different phases, right? Handover at each phase. So let's just say you're planning. You've got conceptual models. They don't really translate to the real models. We've got a little handover. Then as we get into design, we spend quite a bit more time detailing some stuff out, making sure systems are correct. There's an engineering aspect to it. By the time we hand that over to the construction guys, it's typically a bunch of PDF sets. It's disconnected data. Depending on the project type or the contract type, it could actually be concurrent with the actual construction cycle. Therefore, changes could have been made, and a new plan set has to get printed and sent out. That sort of stuff. PDF is obviously more desirable than a paper set, but what if there was a way to give them a little bit more insight? The biggest one there, Dave, is the operations. Construction operations, right? We, too often give people a hyperlink PDF set and think that that's great, and it is, because it's much better than handing binders of O&M manuals and all that fun stuff. We've worked with a customer, and I won't name names here, where they've specified BIM level data for a model, but they didn't specify at which level. They just said, we need BIM on this project. Now, an issue arose where the facility that was housing those O&M manuals actually flooded. They did not have backup copies. They had to go back to the GC and ask for backup copies of the O&M manuals themselves. Their whole thought was, well, we could just go back to the BIM model and find the data. Well, there was no data in the model, and it got them to realize, oh, we actually don't know anything about BIM because we didn't specify what level of information we needed. How they required certain data, right? This is on an owner to kind of anticipate future needs, or maybe it's on the teams involved in the construction process to educate the owner. But really, if we can build this data set in as we're going through the design and engineering process, and even construction, right? We want commissioning data, warranty information, all that fun stuff to feed back into our model. Like that data loss, that handover component becomes so minuscule. Like we pretty much give them everything they need right out the gate. Until recently, though, we haven't had systems that have been capable rather of taking that data, right? You want to give somebody a Revit model with all this high level detail, LOD 400, whatever it is, information in it for specific items that they're going to need in their asset management as well as their FM systems. That wasn't there. But I think today where we're at now is there are plenty of solutions out there. Even Autodesk has some solutions as far as managing assets and turning over to operations. I think there's a lot of change that's going to happen. We're going to start to see requirements from owners in this.
I definitely agree, Joe. And just to kind of hit this one home here, you see how in each phase, like going from design to construction, it almost seems like they're starting over, right? And they're losing a lot of that data that is involved there. Like I saw a graphic on LinkedIn yesterday, and it really stuck with me actually. It was of a design with pipes and a cable tray, and it said, an experienced BIM modeler over inexperienced, and one showed that the pipes would go straight, and they took the cable tray and they actually ran it up over the pipe, so they made like a bridge with it and then over through the other side.
I saw this graphic. It's beautiful, man.
Yeah, it is. And yeah, the experienced was just lower the pipes beneath the cable tray and they could hang them there, and it would cost everybody less money, less time. There's a less chance for error at that point. And
instead of installing, and just to paint a picture here, instead of installing elbows and bending pipe bends and all that sort of stuff to get over the tray, which would have been more costly, they simply just chose to move an element and mitigate the whole issue right out the gate rather
Exactly.
than
Yes.
overthinking an issue.
Yes. So in that sense, dude, a lot of times, of course, experience is where you're going to get that. A lot of times, if we don't have a design build kind of focused firm, they're not typically going into those construction projects, right? So they'll get it to a certain level and they'll think they're doing good. I'm going to go ahead and place my pipes here. I'm going to raise them up, put them over this. But really, it would just be more rework for the construction team later, right? So I think this is also where we have to take that shift in the industry and look at this kind of graphic and say, okay, when we are in a common data environment, because that's of course where we're going to go with this, but when we are in this common data environment, can we get together, communicate, right, to set these expectations of, hey, let us go ahead and take it at this portion of the job or at this percentage, so we can go ahead and start detailing it further. We found that if we start this, sooner, that we actually make up time. We have less errors. We have less information loss at that point in time that we can move forward with. Right. So I think that, that is going to be a focus this year in 2021 and moving forward is how can we bridge that information loss? How can we get involved sooner? Maybe bringing that blue line to that green line a little bit sooner, right? Or bringing it up to that overall information value and seeing how we can really push these projects forward.
Yep. And so our one of our main solution that we're going to talk about today, obviously we chatted about yesterday a little bit, is the Construction Cloud. It's BIM 360 at its core, but we're going to dive into actually the modules. We're actually going to show you how to do some of this stuff and what each module actually does and what it's solving, what pain point it is. I know yesterday we spent some time on a slide deck here, but so just to dive in real quick, for those of you guys that didn't tune in yesterday, our BIM 360, just a quick overview of what it is. It's a common data environment. So what does that mean? It is a file repository for all your files, essentially. So not just your CAD documents, your Revit, your PDF, whatever. Upload anything and everything up into there, and it'll actually connect with other file repositories, right? We end up in silos too often, where say survey and layout are on one team. You've got site contractors, you've got MEP, you've got all these people with their own file repositories. Maybe they're internal or maybe they're external facing as well. But what happens is they're disconnected. So what we were able to do is we're actually able to bridge that. We use BIM 360 as the underpinning, and we'll talk about how this is changing as well. But really what's happening is we're actually just going to leverage that data, share that data with other people, and actually put hooks so that other people can access that data from other programs. Maybe they've got TopCon Magnet Enterprise or whatever it is, where they want to share the data back and forth, or Dropbox or whatever it is. We can actually hook to that data. We can do the same thing with Bluebeam. There's a lot of different cool things and powers that BIM 360 affords us. So with that said, you've got a common data environment, all your files are in one place, and then you launch specific tools related to each individual job or role or industry target, whatever it is, to actually perform based on that file set. But again, all that documentation, all the changes, they live inside of BIM 360, and it's doing great things. Version control, markups, the whole communication aspect, it all gets tracked. So there's a big CYA for GCs.
Well, yeah, I think it is a CYA, but I also think that it's really going to show a lot of that metadata that is typically lost, right? Especially as we talk about setting hooks in other programs and being able to communicate back and forth with that data, a lot of times that would be lost, right? And in this sense, if I'm thinking about like BIM 360 Home here, we can make that like this dashboard full of partner cards and get our integrations and collect that data back into BIM 360. So we can have it all there. We can see it.
And that's important, especially as we dive in to the analytics component of this presentation here in a second, where we talk about tying it all together and future looking and all that stuff. Like, we need that metadata to actually analyze and get better. We have to do an improvement essentially to always making sure that we're always on our toes, that we're never being laggards. And there's a component of this that actually does that for us.
Yep. We're going to get into that just here in a second. So with the first kind of slide of this, right, we have to talk about BIM 360 docs, because this is where it's all kind of starting. This is where it all begins. Now, as Joey said,
Yesterday, we gave kind of an overview. Today, we're going to dive in a little bit more into what BIM 360 Docs is. So, of course, we have that controlled publishing, the viewing and sharing of information, our document control and versioning for all of those file types. And then we're going to be able to, perform design reviews with those 2D and 3D documents, models, right? And then we can also quickly compare them and place markups. Now, I'm going to go ahead and get right into here we go. And document management. So this is BIM 360 Docs. So as you kind of saw from the mobile version yesterday, you have a plans and project files, right? Here are all of our folders, team spaces, or just the data that you want to kind of share, right? Now, as I want to kind of point out that one again, yesterday, that mobile access, you're seeing the exact same data. Okay, so whether it's from the desktop version or it's from the mobile version, you're going to see the same data. Now, this data and the way that it can be, looked at or interpreted can be controlled. So we can set permissions on each one of these folders here to allow full folder control, view only. We even have the capability to say view and download, upload only, view, download, and upload, and then we can allow editing. Okay. So we can set these permissions and specify exactly who we want to go where. Now, in terms of like managing this data as well, I kind of said there before, you're going to see full version control. So if I get into like my architectural folder here, you're going to see I have version 8 on my school architectural central model. Okay. Now, I can quickly click on this versioning here, and you can see I have compare versions. I can go ahead and select maybe version 8 and compare it to version 4. So I can quickly go ahead, compare these two models together, specify what sheet or view that I do want to compare on each of those, and then it'll go ahead and line things up for me. Now, I'm going to jump into this just for a second, but essentially you're going to see that this is going to resemble our 3D model viewer that you have with any of these models. Now, this one does say exactly, what was modified, what's removed, what's been added. It gives us a different list of the disciplines that have been affected by these changes. And it's nice because we can go ahead and start filtering down by those disciplines or apply, like a filter kind of thing. But again, as things change, what I really like about this is the fact that, again, this model will show you exactly what has changed. So it'll also tell you, the thermal mass changes if you have any like brick on the face of your wall and you changed it or made a window bigger, anything like that. It will tell you what the difference is in terms of material. So that is a very, important data. That's very important data to know, to take into consideration after we make these changes. Now, the other thing I wanted to, oh, go ahead.
I was gonna say that's a great thing to show off too. You showed it in Revit files, obviously works for 2D, PDFs, DWGs, whatever as well, and that's a great thing. But my favorite thing about it is too often we used to get clouded changes and they just cloud the whole sheet and say everything's changed, but maybe there's like 3 things that changed. This just gives us such better insight, and not only that, it actually saves us time. Time is money, right?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. That is right. And another kind of portion to that is you give someone the full capability to view this model, right? We talked about it yesterday. Visibility is a very important part of our industry, whether you're in the field, you're in the office, wherever you are, to be able to tie into this information in this sense is very powerful, right? We can click on any of these elements here. We can get into their properties so we can see information and pull information about it, what the height of this wall is, what type it is, what the volume is, anything like that. We can pull a lot of that information, right? Now, again, going back to some of our previous points, while we're in this 3D viewer, we can also go ahead and place markups. Let's say I need to make a call out. Now, as Joey kind of showed yesterday, and I did point out, there is a way to make these call outs, or not the call outs, the markups, private or public. So if you do have notes for yourself as you're walking around that job site, you can go ahead and just keep those notes right to yourself, okay? And we can just hit save markup. Nobody else will see this, All right, they're essentially, when they get in it, they're going to look at something just like this. Okay, now we can take our measurements, we can do dimensions, things like that. But the other portion that I really wanted to talk about today, especially when we talk about, pain points and how we can start alleviating a lot of these different, rework or communication barriers that we seem to be running into. And one of those is going to be issues. So of course we can place markups on these documents to start, really telling people what we want. But the other way to do that is by creating an issue here. So if let's say I don't like this window right there, or if I just want to place an issue right here, notice that it snaps right to that element. And again, we definitely talked about issues yesterday, but going into a little bit more depth with them today, we can get in and specify exactly what type of issue this is, whether it's punch listing, its quality, its safety, its design, coordination, clash, what have you, right? We're going to be able to specify our window. Okay, and then we can go ahead and assign this to someone. So this is literally assigning that task, right? And if you think about that for a second here, you're creating that metadata behind it too, right? You're not just creating an issue that's going to go here. You're creating a log, a record of this issue and who it was assigned to, when you asked them to have a response to you back by. If you have locations here, we can go ahead and specify the location of where this is. So I know this is going to be on the second floor here. Yeah, that's on the second floor. And then I can say the location details. I can say the root cause if I want to. Let's say constructability, or let's say design deficiency, anything like that. This is further going to help us. This root cause here is further going to help us with our decisions in the future, like mitigating risk, as Joey was kind of talking about earlier. And I definitely want to get into here in a little bit, but there's BIM 360 Home, right? There's BIM 360 Insight. And this insight essentially is going to allow us to look at what we've been doing, who we've worked with. And as we're moving forward, trying to make better decisions, we can essentially see how these different workflows, how these different processes working with this team over this team has affected our overall projects. Okay, now again, going back to this, there's my issue there. I do want to go ahead and get back into document management here, and I wanted to show you this right here. So here is the issue tab in the main overall document management home screen, and you'll see that essentially we have our full log, like I said, a full log or record of every design issue or just issue in general that was created here. We can go ahead and see, we can search for these, we can filter for them, of course, to find specific ones, and notice that we can quickly export this out as this PDF or a CSV report. Now, I really like this PDF report, guys. I'm going to tell you, I like it because it essentially breaks down every one of your issues, and it gives you like a like a glossary page, a hyperlinked kind of index page of all of the different of all the different issues. Now I do have one here in my downloads. This was from yesterday here, issue report. There we go. And essentially what you'll see is we have a nice issue report. It says who it was made by. It puts your company's logo right there in the top right. It tells you how many items you have in the report. Again, it does make a nice hyperlinked issue report. So this is all this data is tracked. All that metadata comes over for the missing covering, what type of issue it was, where it's located. And then again, it's going to have all of that information right here, whether it is open, it's been answered, it's closed. You'll see that if I actually click on the name, like my name here, it's actually going to open up Outlook and bring up a email here for me to, send out an email. So if I know, okay, we had this issue and I need to talk to this person and I know this is overdue and, Joe has not gotten back to me yet, I can go ahead and click on his name and say, hey, man, can you look at issue 37? It seems like it's been due since May and we haven't had anything on this. Can you let me know what's going on. And it's a quick way, again, to connect everybody together with a simple document, right? And in that sense. Now, you guys saw me create the issue right there in the document, in the model itself. You'll notice that you can do it that way. And then, of course, it's going to assign it to what document it was. But we can also create them here, just kind of overall as a project, and we can assign them, specify what type of issue it is. If we know the location, if we want to add a document, we can go ahead and choose the document that we want to add this issue to. So you can also do it from right here.
And that's a great workflow, especially if we're talking about like maybe a miscalculation on an Excel file, or maybe we're talking about some kind of specification document, not necessarily the design data, the plan sets or anything like that, but maybe supplemental thing, because that way you can actually just attach it to it and still have the same robust functionality without it being geolocated on a specific page.
Yep. Yep, so we can do it either way and really connect those together. One big thing I did want to notate is that you'll notice attributes, that's what they're called. The attributes here are tracking the issues and markups per sheet, right? Per page, everything that you are assigning this to. If they do have any issues, if they do have any markups on them, you will see that essentially it's just going to populate here, and it's going to let you know that, you know, maybe you need to review this document. Okay. So,
and those attributes are customizable, and there's a cool
yes.
workflow if you're working with PDFs where you can create custom attributes and have them associate with title blocks. So it'll do OCR and then pre-populate in those attribute fields with whatever data you're wanting it to do. It's pretty remarkable.
It is. It's very cool the way that they did that. Now, in terms of, you know, getting it offline, we also showed that yesterday. We can get this information as much as we need to. We can download any of these documents or any of these models that we may need for taking them offline, opening them up and sharing that data, of course. I think.
So you're solving the communication aspect of this, right? You're solving the collaboration component, but I still think we're kind of missing, you know, how to mitigate quality, how to, you know, reduce issues before we get on the job site. There's, you know, there's those three crucial issues that we talked about. This is going to solve, you know, the communication and collaboration component that seems to be lacking with the data silos. But how would we use this tool to, you know, reduce rework and all that sort of stuff?
Well, in this sense, that's where I was talking about the plans and project files here, and I'll do a little bit of a deep dive with these. The project files, this is where your live kind of collaborative models can live. And you'll notice we can store, you know, InfoWorks models here, we can store CAD models, we can store a little bit of everything here to really bring all of this data together, whether they're CAD details, they're advanced steel assemblies, they're MEP fabrication kind of elements, models, you know, what have you. We're going to be able to, again, host this information here and then bring it all together by linking them. Okay, so essentially the way that the project files works is, of course, we have our own team spaces. But if you set up your permissions, or let's say even you just want to use the shared folder here, right? Create a shared folder and then allow people access into that. We can choose when we decide to publish and share this information, updating our version, right? And sharing that to our project partners. Now that's one workflow, of course, the publish and consume, which we can go a little bit further detail in terms of the design collaboration part that we talked about a little bit yesterday. That's where the publish and consume function kind of lives there, and the package creation, things like that. So we can specify the exact data that everyone is seeing, but also at the same time, know that if you're linked to the school Arch Central here, when this central model updates to version 9 and you have this linked into, let's say, your coordination model or your electrical model here, if I have this linked into my school MEP, when that model is updated, I see that in my model. If I'm opening this school MEP here, I can see that change, and I can go ahead and use the, you know, the interference checks, or really what I like to get into is the clash prevention in that sense, right? But when we really talk about clash detection and things like that, we're going to push off of document management. And I think that's really when we would move forward into, well, BIM 360 Coordinate. This is where you're going to see that clash detection, the model aggregation, the trade coordination. As I was talking there, if we do link those models together, we can go ahead and pull those models together into a coordination space or a coordination type model for our constructability reviews. We have round trip coordination, because as this is happening, right, as those models are updated, they are automatically clash detected, right? We have that version control telling us that it's going from version 8 over to version 9. And then again, it's going to run this clash detection for us. Now I have this right over here, and you're going to see I'm in the model coordination space right here. Now we have our models, our clashes, and our views. But again, these models are being pulled from that document management, okay? What I did was I made a collaboration kind of coordination space here. I've named this one School Project. But essentially what we can do is I have my architectural, my structural, and my MEP models of the school listed up. And you'll see that I can go ahead and start filtering to look at each one of these models. Now, typically we'll have a lot more on a bigger construction project, but in saying that, you can filter down to specific contributors if you're looking for a certain model and you know who shares that model, or again, a company, okay? So it'll help us find specific models and information from dates, okay? Now, if we go into our class, oh, go ahead.
I was going to say, and this is really important because it actually helps us get to that point where we're connecting coordination, right? It's not, again, a siloed process. We talked about this yesterday, where you've got ridiculously long coordination meetings that are, mostly filled up with clash detection reviews. And it should be some situation where you're just empowering everybody to do clash detection in their own part, at least to the minute portion. And maybe we'll address larger issues in our coordination meeting. But coordination goes much more than clash detection. And then to that end, this kind of repository, adding the issue component and the communication component to it, allows us to kind of hold people accountable. And this is where the power is for reducing that rework and
Yes.
improving QA/QC.
Yeah, I definitely agree, and it's really pushing into that full circle of that project. We were looking at that graphic earlier, Joe, with the subcontractors and the GC and the architect and the owner. Excuse me. When they push changes up, essentially it has to go all the way around, and then it kind of stops. And it looks more of like a triangle with a random line floating out the other end of it, right? But essentially it kind of makes almost like just a polygon kind of shape, and it doesn't really connect. And in my mind, what I like to see is, I know I'm going to quote Rob Schneider here, but a circle, right? We want to see the circle that actually goes through and it follows the entire chain. So as that information is updated, as the subcontractor goes out, as the GC goes out, as anything is updated, as these points are laid out, as these assemblies are done, it's going to update everybody else's information, right? And in this sense too, as these models are updated, right, we're looking at these clashes, and you kind of pointed out that issue engine. We're really, I think, taking a portion of that anxiety that you might have with coordination, knowing that you need to have this updated model. You're waiting on someone to give you a model to run this clash detection, and you've already got the other two. You want to start doing things so you can get your clash reports out, or whatever it is. We're going to be able to jump into this interface here, and it's already got it done. So I can say, all right, I want to look at my MEP versus my structural model. So I can go ahead and just click in here and know that I have 176 issues to go ahead and kind of look over and do some QA/QC on. Now, the great thing about this is, yeah, that's a lot of issues, right, that we're getting into. But what we can do is kind of go through and start saying, okay, what's up with this? We see that we have a bend going through one of our pile caps. Yeah, that's probably not going to happen. So we're going to go ahead and say, yes, that's an issue, right? So we can go ahead and say, what type of issue is this? And you're going to see the coordination clash, right? I can put it right on that model element, okay? Now, Joey and I kind of talked about this yesterday, but when this issue is created, after I've gone through, I've assigned this to whoever I need to assign it to, essentially what I can do is, what they can do is take that issue right into the design program itself. So if this is coming from Revit, they're going to see that issue right in Revit. So I'm going to say this is a design coordination issue and create. And there it is. It's been moved to the assigned tab. Now, let's say I grab this one over here or this one right here. We do have some structural elements going through that one. I do need to go ahead and say that's a good one. Okay, so on something like this, even that, this is full of clashes. I have a lot of work to do in this one. But even with my pendant light here, it's just saying that it's all right. We're just going to say this one is not an issue. I just wanted to be able to show that off, but apparently I have a lot of issues today. So in this one, this is where we can specify that this is, not an issue, and we're going to say, okay, this is minimal overlap, or it's just a model inaccuracy, things like that, and we could say okay. And you're going to see that it's going to move it over to the closed tab, right? So it helps us clean this entire model up. And once it's been closed, right, it's not going to pop back up as another clash. So moving forward, it knows that, and you don't have to go back through and say, okay, I covered these last time and this and that. I know this isn't a clash. You're not doing your rework in that sense. You're letting BIM 360 already know that that's been done. This is good to go. It's been closed. Let's talk about these open issues. Okay, and then if we have any new issues that pop up, okay? So that's a nice kind of, again, bridge for not just the actual clash detection, and yes, automation of that is great, but also enabling that communication, and as Joey said earlier, kind of assigning the responsibility for these issues and these tasks that we do need to get done. Now, another portion of this that I did want to talk about, we do happen to think of glue a lot of times, right? When we talk about the model coordination and shared views and things like that. Well, you'll notice that some of that glue functionality did come up. We can actually create our shared views here within model coordination. So we can specify whether this is a public or a private view. So we can keep these views just for ourselves too. If you wanted to see how things are going, we can set these views up and share them, or again, keep them private. Now, pushing forward off of that though, is another huge portion to, again, keeping this metadata, and that's going to be BIM 360 build, right? This is where we're going to get our checklist creations, our RFI tracking, the submittal tracking, more issue management. We're going to see that we have field issues in that sense. We can get our daily reports, have safety meetings, different things like that. So as Joey was kind of talking about earlier, with safety issues and things like that, really bringing this full circle, and even with a coordination meeting itself, we can really start to schedule and track who are all at these meetings, who has answered our different clash and coordination issues. We can go through and I can hit create new meeting here, specify what type of meeting I want to do. I can attach any documents that I may need or models, let's say. I can actually include a video conference link. So if you're using Teams, you can hit it right there, but you'll notice that since Autodesk did go ahead and kind of partner with Zoom there for a little bit, we can see that you can add the Zoom meeting right here into BIM 360 Docs. So again, kind of making that connection, helping people with communication through maybe a video conference.
I really like that feature, man. So think about doing your safety meetings. Maybe you've got a document that everybody needs to sign. You can import that as a checklist and then just have people sign it. There will be not only will be there'll be their signature on it and you'll have the physical copy, but there'll actually be the metadata that goes with it. And that slide you showed, we showed 4 different main components. We showed safety, we showed checklists, we showed RFIs and submittals. And typically historically we've done all this stuff in separate systems, but what you're losing, you mentioned this earlier, is you're losing all the metadata that goes with it. So what do we gain by having all this metadata in one place? It's actually trackability. So you have that piece of it, but also there's that learning component with it. You've probably been stale on this web page for too long.
Yeah, that's what it is. But I was just saying, like the metadata that comes with it, if somebody attends the meeting and somebody doesn't attend the meeting, I mean, that's literally tracked right here. So as you're saying, we can go ahead and share this out by emails. We can export this data out. We can schedule a follow-up meeting. this is awesome. You know, I think that it really keeping, again, all that metadata, you know, as you said, the checklists, we can use that for our meetings, or we can use that for our QA, QC, the punch walks, right? We can see that we can use those for safety issues, for tracking as items arrive on site. There's a lot of different ways that we can use this information. And again, we're keeping it all together, right? Now, you can easily export this information typically out into PDF or like the CSV or XLSX, going to Excel in this case. But we can build out our submittals, the items, the packages, our spec sections, the RFIs themselves.
There's an auto spec section now as well with Autodesk acquisition of Pipe. Yeah.
Yeah. That's I haven't gotten to play with that one too much yet, but I've been really looking forward to getting into that. Now, the Rfi engine, you guys will notice we talked about this one as well yesterday. This is built on that issue engine again. So every time we create an RFI, we can create a generic, or we can go right into that document and assign it right into that document. Of course, assigning responsibility and all that good stuff as well. And then we can, of course, export that and track all of the information as those RFIs, you know, well, progress, as they are answered, as they're closed, different things like that. Our checklist. So Joey, you have a pro tip for this one that I really wanted to talk about.
Oh my gosh, yes. So there, this has been like BIM 360 build's been in the works for a really long time. There was a predecessor product called BIM 360 Field, and what I really liked about Field, beyond the high level of customization, was that we could pull from like a repository of over 1,000 or nearly 1,000 various pre-made checklists. You know, spanning everything from safety to punch to, you know, code compliance to you name it, it was in there. Commissioning even, right? They had checklists for all this sort of stuff. Well, you can actually launch the old version of this. So, you know, BIM 360 Build gives you an entitlement to Field, launch Field, and then just go through the repository and export all the templates that you want. And then, you know, you can bring those in. You can also create your own and just do this import functionality that you got up there. And it, you know, again, it's pretty easy. And then from there, once they're in your templates, you can just continually pull from them and reassign them to people over and over and over again. This is one of my favorite parts about the build platform, because checklists, whenever it gets a negative response, you can actually set it up so it automatically creates an issue. So we're tying the issues into the punch, right? So, you know, I'm doing my, you know, CA work, or if I'm, you know, doing a punch walk or whatever I'm doing, I'm going through every time that I see an issue in my punch, you know, I you know, press a button, it wants to create an issue. From the issue, it says, hey, do you want to attach a photo? I, you know, add that, you know, I'm on my mobile device, I take a photo. You know, when I'm done, essentially, it automatically is sending notifications to the people that I'm assigning those issues to. We've had instances where people were like on the 3rd floor, and then all of a sudden the electrician shows up on the 1st floor and starts resolving those issues that, you know, were just assigned to him, you know, just a few hours earlier. So it really speeds up the process.
It does, but I also wanted to kind of talk about this portion as well, like with required signatures or setting up a like a review process, right? You can set up your review processes or your approval processes within BIM 360 as well, and take that data to say, okay, I know that this checklist was created, it was assigned to Joey, we had an ADA clearance issue, this has been answered, this has been fixed, and I've actually signed this on this date and at this time. So it tracks as those are done and who signed off on it. So again, making sure that we have that full CYA in that sense to, you know, have that data there to back it up. We can always pull this out and activate this. We can export this as a PDF report, so we can take that out as much as we need it.
Yeah, and again, this is great. It goes back to that what we were saying earlier with meeting minutes and safety meetings. You can create a safety checklist and, you know, have everybody essentially just sign right there on their mobile device that, you know, that they receive the information, you know, all that sort of stuff. So again, adding to that CYA component. But, you know, as we're starting to wrap up, we're running out of time here. But we've talked about the metadata. There's a component in this. Before we get to coming changes, go back to BIM 360 if you don't mind. There's a component of this that gets tracked, right? So in the insight component, right? You're putting all this information in here. How are you going to leverage this? It's great to capture information. Yeah, you're mitigating risk. You are reducing your chance of having to do rework, you are focusing on quality. This is giving you the tools to get there, but what are you doing for future? What are you doing to better enable yourself? Well, with this is actually looking at the various components and metadata that's being captured, and it's analyzing it. It's doing pattern recognition, which is, you know, we all get scared about machine learning and AI and all that sort of stuff, like robots are taking our jobs. But this is one of those instances where it's actually just forcing us to work smarter. It's capturing the data, performing pattern recognition, and letting us know that, hey, look, you know, 6 projects ago you did this type of work. Well, let's bring this in, tie in extra data, get more data points, and then it'll give us notifications or let us know that, hey, you worked with these 2 subcontractors on this type of project. You guys are X percent more likely to run into an issue here. Just be cognizant of it. Like, this kind of pattern recognition is being applied. 10 years from now, we'll see what kind of data we get through BIM 360 because of it. But I'm really excited for this. You know, you and I are big data geeks, so this is pretty cool to see this level of functionality come into BIM 360.
It really is. And as I'm kind of going through here, these are the different cards, the library that you can kind of customize your Insight, kind of interface, or even BIM 360 home with, right? But you're going to see a lot of that, like Joey was talking about, the safety conformance, like the safety checklist conformance, the quality checklist conformance, some field issues, coordination issue status. It's just aimed to give you all of that data.
And the hooks that are going in are awesome. So like those cards that you pulled up, there's a one for, I believe, SmartVid, which what it's going to do is it's going to, or maybe it's not a card, maybe it's just a separate plugin. But what it's going to do is there it is. It's a card. What it'll do is it'll actually look at all your videos and your photos and actually analyze them for, missing, safety equipment, missing harnesses, nobody's wearing a seatbelt in a truck. Like, it's going to analyze all that sort of stuff, again, using pattern recognition to give you kind of an overview of your construction site. So it's pretty cool. The system is just getting better and better and better, and I love that. So with that, though, we should probably talk about how it's getting better, right? So what's coming next, these changes, right? Autodesk announced at AU last year some new products that were coming into the fray, right? We've got Autodesk, is it called Quantify? I think they changed the name recently, right?
Yeah, I think it's Takeoff now.
Takeoff, okay, Autodesk Takeoff. Essentially, the name says it all. It's going to be a takeoff tool. But with that, they released, hey, we're going to do away with the terminology of BIM 360. It's just going to be Autodesk. So, it's not BIM 360 docs anymore. Now it's going to be Autodesk docs, which is kind of different from BIM 360 docs as we see it today, because what it's doing is it's using PlanGrid, Autodesk acquired PlanGrid, for those of you guys that don't know. It's using that really robust, awesome PlanGrid engine to give us access and, to this whole platform that we're doing with common data environment with BIM 360 docs, but it's built on PlanGrid. So a lot more functionality there, a lot of cool tools and stuff that are going to come out of it. And if you have an AEC collection, you're using Revit, Navisworks, that sort of stuff, it's free. You already have it. You're already going to have access to it. They've also announced some other changes. So if you're using BIM 360 design or model coordination, we talked about both those today, less so about design, more so about model coordination. Well, Autodesk is switching that up. So it's going to be called Autodesk Collaborate. So in Autodesk Collaborate, you'll get access to model coordination. And in Autodesk Collaborate Plus, you'll get access to model coordination plus BIM 360 design. So you'll actually get access to the cloud Revit work sharing as well as the cloud coordination component all in one package. It's pretty awesome, and I believe it's roughly the same cost as what we pay for design today. We'll find out more of that as it's released next month. And then the other component of this is that field management. Dave, you showed off BIM 360 Build, which is comprised of project management and field management tools. But what's happening is Autodesk, again, they acquired PlanGrid. They revamped the platform to do all the great things that PlanGrid does. All right, so PlanGrid does an amazing thing with OCR, where if you have like 1,000 sheets in there, right, you've uploaded them, all that fun stuff. It's pretty much OCR to every document. You're searching for a specific VAV or whatever, you type in that VAV number, and it's automatically going to run through every sheet, and within seconds, it's going to pull up the specific sheets that have that referenced item in there. It's so remarkable, so robust, and I can't wait to show that off, hopefully next month when it becomes available for everybody. But so again, BIM 360 build as it stands today, it's kind of being repackaged, rebuilt onto PlanGrid. It'll be released, I believe, next month. No official release date, but stay tuned.
All right, well, thank you everyone for joining us. Just to bring it all together, we talked about the common data environment and how important that is to everyone involved, all of the stakeholders in the project. But of course, enabling quick data access to field teams. This is going to help us with those communication issues that we see. The version control gives us peace of mind that we are, of course, operating in the right version, but a lot of times it also does let us know that we don't need to go back and do anything else. If we do need to take it back, we can essentially enable that, talk about that communication between the office and the field and saying, hey, we need something changed here. Let's go ahead and update this, or can we push out a new version? And then also, because we are bringing everyone together, we're trying to eliminate that rework, right? Getting everyone involved in that process. Now, I said earlier, if we could, we'd like to have the construction teams involved in the design process sooner, or kind of set those expectations and communicate when they could take that model in terms of what percentage, where, what LOD, and they want to move it forward. Or it's just that we get them involved into with issues, maybe into the document or into the model with issues and things like that, saying, okay, this is not constructible. Let's go ahead and get it modeled this way, or let's go ahead and maybe try this. And essentially, again, building that that metadata there to help not only the design teams learn, but to help alleviate that rework that their teams would both need to end up doing.
100%, man.
All right, do we have any questions?
I don't see any questions posted.
Well, I know we're running a little bit over, so if you do have any questions, feel free to post them, or of course, eats.com, or email us. Joey and I are always here to help.
Yeah, and I believe that number still works. We just have a preferred new number.
Okay.
Yeah, so reach out to us. We're on LinkedIn, Twitter, Facebook. Feel free to contact TopCon Solutions in any form, or reach out to Dave and myself. We're always happy to help. Thank you for your time.